I am now live. Okay. After a terrible attempt on YouTube that did not work out, we're going to see if Instagram is any better because of the connection. So we're going to wait for some people to come on. I see some people already joining. What's up? Let me know if you guys could hear me. I don't know if the audio is connected properly. So if you hear the audio well, it's working. I just want to make sure the audio is working. So if you guys could text it onto the chat, just make sure that it's working well. Make sure that it's going live. Audio is good. I want a thumbs up if you guys could hear the audio. Audio is working. Cool. Perfect. Audio is connected. Lighting is connected. Nice. Perfect. Okay, cool. So now we can actually start. Shout out to all those giving me a chance on YouTube. It clearly was not working well. Okay. So a lot of people sent in questions before on YouTube. They sent in questions that they wanted specifically answered. If you have questions, feel free to put it on the chat. I'm not sure what the lag time is like. So let's see. I'm not sure what the lag time is like. So if you guys have a comment or a question, feel free to put it in and I'll try my best to be able to respond to that. In the meantime, I'm going to start going through some of the questions that people asked, which I thought were interesting. And we're just going to go from there. Let's see. I'm going to pull this up right now. I wrote them down. I don't know if I wrote down who wrote each question, but I'll go through them to see what we had. So let's see here. Starting with the first question I got. Someone asked, how many rounds of ammunition should be stored for stockpiling? So let's see here 1 second. Yes, I should post. Good, thank you. I appreciate you answering. I'm going to write on the community post that we are now on Instagram. Before I start, I'm sorry. Let's give some people a chance to be able to actually get onto there. While I'm doing that, let's see here. Okay, so I don't know what's the deal with my service. It seems like it's very off. So I will very sincerely apologize to those who missed it. So the first question someone asked is about stockpiling ammunition and what amount of ammunition should be considered good for stockpiling. I think the main question that's going to come up is what your purpose of use is for the stockpiling. If it's going to be something along the lines of end of the world scenario where you don't know what the world's going to be like and you're worried about riot control and stuff like that, then I would say, for me personally, my kind of minimum number is going to be 2,000 rounds of ammunition. That's kind of like my starting point, which means that if you have 2,000 rounds of ammo, that's the ammunition you never touch. And you could have a separate pile of ammunition for training, for general use, for anything like that. But that specific ammunition should never be touched. That's if all hell breaks loose, that's the ammunition I'm using. Obviously, if you're able to get more than that, then get more than that. But one of the things I think need to be taken into consideration is that if you have, let's say, body armor, if you have a belt carrier setup, and you have something properly structured for the use of your battle belt or whatever it might be, how much ammunition is able to be carried on that? So if my chest rig has, let's say, 3 magazines stacked next to each other, and if it's going to be another one that's going to be on my belt, and then maybe additional ones on the side, let's say you're fully loaded, that's probably not going to be 2,000 rounds of ammunition. Also, ammunition gets really heavy. I think per 30 round magazine, obviously it might depend on the weight of the bullet and stuff like that. It's roughly a pound of weight. So every additional magazine you have is adding additional pounds to your gear, which is not a problem. It's just a consideration you need to take when it comes to carrying that much ammo. So if I'm saying 2,000 rounds, even with yourself fully loaded, you're probably not going to hit that number. So it might be good as a small refill to the main ones you're going to carry. So if you're leaving your home, then how much ammunition are you able to carry on you? And that might be something you want to consider when you're stockpiling. So again, if it's going to be, I'm leaving my house, I'm going somewhere else, how much ammo could you potentially carry? If it's going to be, I'm staying in my home, then as much ammo as you're able to have in your house, the better. But as a general rule for myself, since ammunition prices and the political climate goes up and down very dramatically, having, I think, 2,000 rounds of ammunition stored as a baseline is a very good number. I also think that it's going to be not per gun, but per platform. So what I mean by that is a lot of people say like, why do you need 10 AR-15s? Because I want to, and because America, but I'm not going to have 2,000 rounds per gun. I'm going to have my primary gun, meaning the gun that I actually think I'm going to be using. That gun is going to have what's called the 2,000 rounds. And then my secondary, let's say my pistol, is going to have that amount of rounds as well. But I'm not going to say you should have 2,000 guns per AR-15 you have, because again, realistically, you're not going to be using them all at once. If you're a part of a community or something along those lines, then having each person set up properly is good. And yes, the Tactical Trash Panda mentioned that those magazines should be full. Don't wait for something to go wrong and then start filling up your magazines. That's not ideal at all. You should have them prepped and ready to go. Something I hear a lot of people say is that they are going to have multiple guns for community members. Though even if they can't get guns for whatever reason, then for themselves, being able to have multiple guns available and being able to give them out to community is going to be beneficial. However, I also want to take into account that if you're the person who plans on being able to give out ammunition and guns, I would hope that the people you're planning on giving it to are not just people who are very patriotic and willing to do anything, but they have, at the minimum, a basic level of firearm safe handling, because you also don't want to just start giving out guns and ammo for a person who might be rapid firing or not know when it's right to shoot, to be on the same team as you. So really take that into consideration if you're going to be a person dealing with that. You really want to make sure that that's something you're involved in. I'm going to go to another question that someone asked. Let me pull this up really quick. Give me one moment. Let's see here. Okay, so another question that someone asked, I'm going to save the political questions for a moment. I'm going to get to the political questions. I'm going to get there. That Jewish conservative, what's up, bro? Nice to see you, man. Someone asked a question about the Techniclip. I think it's pronounced as the Techniclip. What it pretty much is there is a certain, I'm not going to call it a holster. It's not a holster, but it's pretty much a clamp that goes around the trigger of your firearm. So it's it's as minimalist as a holster as you could get while still protecting the trigger from not accidentally being depressed. Yes, I'm going to save the live. I'm sorry if I'm not, I keep distracting myself. I'm going to try to save the live and post it after so you guys can watch it. So I actually have one over here because I was going to do a review on it. Let me pull it up for you guys actually. So this is from NSR Tactical. I got this a long time ago, and actually this is even the wrong piece. This is the wrong piece, but I'm going to keep going with it. Pretty much, it looks similar to this, where it clips around the trigger, so the barrel will be on top of it, and it goes over the trigger guard, so it blocks the trigger from being depressed, and then this clamps into your appendix. Generally, I think it's for appendix. I don't think it'll be super comfortable to carry anywhere else, but it'll clip onto your belt line, and then you draw the gun, and you're good to go. So it's as minimalist as you could get. Generally speaking, I'm super against this. The main reason being that you're not able to reholster the gun. So if you're looking for the ultimate level of concealment, I do believe that we're in a time where technology is pretty good, and there's a lot of really great holster options that you're able to get that would work well enough for concealment while not doing something like that. Because a lot of people think that I'm only putting the gun away if the situation's over, but that's not always the case. The other case is going to be about if you need to go hands-on for a second, or if there's a person you want to be able to move, if there's someone you need to grab to get out of the way, if there's someone that was, God forbid, shot and you want to render aid, but the situation might not be fully done yet, then that might be a time that you want to have a holster that you could reholster into. So the Techniclip, I believe it's called, or any variation of a holster that's only going to cover the trigger guard, I'm personally not a fan of because I don't want that to be a problem. Someone just asked, TB David 83, that he concealed carries, deep concealed carries in his shul, in his synagogue, but he does not carry a spare magazine. Why do you need a spare magazine? So I know some people in the comments are probably already answering. Yes. So the number one reason why we carry a spare magazine is not because of capacity, but it's because of a double feed malfunction or another issue that might be magazine related specifically. So one of the main reasons that a double feed malfunction happens is because the spring or the magazine itself could be worn out, and the spring is pretty much going to launch rounds into the chamber of the gun, which will induce a double feed malfunction. So having that malfunction is very annoying. If we're going to be very broad in general terms of talking about how the average gunfight is 3 rounds, 3 yards, 3 seconds, the average person I've seen clear a double feed malfunction the conventional way clears a double feed malfunction in around 6 seconds. I'm not saying that people haven't trained faster or more efficiently and they're able to do it quicker, but from what I've seen giving classes, the average time is roughly 6 seconds. Now, I did post a video quite a while ago about clearing a double feed malfunction single-handed, and it's able to be cleared in roughly 2 seconds. So either I'm going to repost that or going to make an updated video on that so you guys can check it out. But the main reason why you want to carry a spare magazine is not because of capacity, but more because of an issue with the magazine itself, which is important. MG in Focus commented, is having a handgun enough? So just owning a handgun. Technically, yes. I do believe that everyone should own an AR-15. I'm saying AR-15 specifically not because there might be a debate in regards to which platforms might be better, but since the AR-15 is so prevalent in the United States and there's millions, if not billions, of aftermarket parts and components, and there's also going to be a huge amount of servicing that's able to be done. Any gun store you go into and hand them an AR-15, they're going to know how to deal with the problems that you have there. Versus if you have an AK, I'm not saying AKs aren't reliable guns, I'm not saying they're not good guns, but it might be slightly less likely that they're able to deal with the issues AK related versus an AR-15, which is very widely available. So I think it's great to have an AR-15. It's more firepower. It gives you ability to have precision at longer distances. And just the sheer amount of them in the United States alone should be something that would be motivating to choose a platform. I also did make a video recently on building an AR-15 for less than $1,000. I'm going to be doing hopefully more of those kinds of videos, as well as also updates if that becomes very changed. So that can be something to consider. Someone else just asked, let me pull that up again. Isaac, he just asked, where's my preferred way to carry a extra magazine? And also someone just asked after that, Alexander just wrote, how many extra magazines should I carry? So let's combine those two. So generally for myself, by the way, since we're live, pausing for a second, you're able to tell me to slow down if I'm talking too fast. I know I talk too fast, but I'm very passionate about the topic. So if I'm going too fast, you could just, do a right slow down. Just 'cause I know I talk too fast, but it's who I am. So the question about where I carry generally appendix. So I'll have my firearm for my right hand draw, and I'll have the spare magazine right next to it. I know for some people that might not work. And also there's a lot of people on the internet who will say like, use this holster. This is the best one for you. And I don't believe that to be the case in any scenario, because your body type, your height, your weight, the way you carry weight in general is going to be different. So don't just assume that one type of holster is going to be the best for you. What I would recommend you do is if there's a YouTuber with a similar body type than you or something along those lines, then if they recommend a holster, at least that could be a closer starting point. Generally, if you're able to carry appendix, I like carrying appendix. That's really what works best for me. Now, there's so much debate in regards to why appendix carry. A part of the reason that's besides for it's being super fast and it's able to be more efficient and you're able to conceal it potentially better. A part of the reason also is that for those of you guys who know, if you look at the title, not the title, my Instagram heading, my name on Instagram is the Tactical Rabbi. So I am Jewish, right? So we have something called fringes or tzitzit. This stuff is going to be a garment that we wear, and on both sides of my body, I have these on both sides. So the problem with that for me is that if I was carrying the 3 o'clock position, or if I was carrying in the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, anything like that, the problem I've had, and it's a risk, is when I'm reholstering the gun, I'm worried about strings getting into the trigger guard and accidentally firing the gun. So it's not always going to be, I'm not going to say that this is the best holster for you, this is the best option for you, because not every person is it going to work for. My choice of why I'm carrying appendix partially is because since this is a consideration for me to take into account, I would rather be a little bit more cautious and carry in a place where strings and material are going to be more easily identifiable. So what I'm saying is that even if I didn't have these, right, if I'm going to be carrying appendix, if I'm going to reholster the gun, I can look down at my holster and see if anything went into the holster or if my shirt got untucked while I was doing the draw. And that way I could just make sure that I'm reholstering without it being a risk of discharging into my environments, is the word I'm going to use. So that's how I carry the gun. That's my preference. That's why I choose to do that way. Let's see. So yeah, that one of the other questions that someone just asked was about safety considerations when carrying. So that's going to be one of them in regards to making sure that when you holster or unholster, you make sure that doesn't go into able to fire. Someone just asked, AB, condition 1 or condition 3, the famous Israel versus USA question. And if you watch the video that I did as a recap to my Vice feature, you'll know that just because I'm Jewish doesn't mean everything I do is according to Israel, because they're not associated with the two. I was born and raised in California, bro. Different thing. So I carry, this is going to start a whole amount of debate on both sides of the firearms world. I carry with a round in the chamber. There's a few reasons for this. I'm just going to wait for the comments to hit for a second, because I know some people hate that and some people like that. I want to hear your feedback of it. Do you carry with one in the chamber or not? Oh, I'm excited for what this is going to entail. So I carry with one in the chamber. There are a few reasons why. The primary reason is because if we're basing the statistics of 3 rounds, 3 yards, 3 seconds, then I want to be able to make sure that I'm able to draw and fire and be efficient without the thought process of needing to rack a gun. Now, I'm not saying that it takes a long time to rack the gun, but I'm saying that if I'm holding my kid, or if I'm with someone else, or if my other hand is somehow occupied in a way that I'm not familiar with, being able to take out the gun and use it efficiently is something that needs to be done efficiently. So I would be very worried about drawing a gun and knowing that the round is empty, because that scares me for what the scenario might be able to do. So now there are videos, there's plenty of videos, actually just someone recently, of people who got into situations where they didn't realize how fast the situation unfolds. So for that reason, they didn't have a gun chambered, or if they started off this fight without realizing that they just got stabbed, so now their left arm is out of commission, or it's just more difficult to use their left arm. Now they're drawing and forcibly having to rack it against your belt, rack it against the counter, rack it against something to get the gun into action. By the way, if you carry a Glock, I hope to God you changed the sights on your Glock. Most Glocks come standard with plastic sights. And if you're someone who's going to carry in without having a round in the chamber, and you rack it against something aggressively because it's stressful and whatever, then you could have the risk of breaking those sights, and that would not be ideal. So I recommend carrying with one in the chamber. Now, part of that is if you're going to be someone who carries without one in the chamber, my question is going to be why. Now, some people will say that it's safer. They feel uncomfortable that something's pointing at any part of their body. It's not just, by the way, appendix. If you're pointing the gun at your femoral artery in your thigh, I would be equally as uncomfortable. So that really is something you should consider. But if it's going to be about unsafe, my recommendation would be to get more training. I'm only saying that because if you're worried that since it's going to be in your appendix, or if it's going to be anywhere in your body, and you're worried that there might be a moment where you might discharge it and that's why it's going to go off, then I would recommend getting more training before carrying, because that makes me worried about your proficiency with firearm safety. I'm not trying to be offensive to anyone. I'm just saying that if your main concern is going to be about accidentally discharging the gun into yourself, then you should really consider that, because that's something that's very dangerous, obviously. So I would recommend carrying with one in the chamber, be proficient with it. If you have a proper holster and you have a known quality brand firearm, it's not going to go off by itself unless the trigger is depressed. So if that's what's going to be considered, then that's going to be something that you should do in regards to training, because the only other variable will be yourself. So take that into account. Someone just logged out. I appreciate you watching. I will hopefully post this live so people can ask more questions. Let's see. More questions for people that ask questions. Let me pull it up. If you have more questions, you can feel free to put it into the comments. I'm just going through what people sent out. And I'm glad I wrote it down, because the YouTube situation crashed miserably. So at least we have some backlog of questions over here. Let's see. I'm pulling up more questions. Again, if you have questions, you can feel free to put in the comments. I'm just scrolling through. Let's see. What is your favorite / most recommended firearm? Let's see. Yes, training is so important. I only carry in condition 3 because of training only. If you're carrying in the position where you're going to have a firearm on you, it should be loaded and it should be ready to go. What is my most recommended gun? Now, I'll give you, there's two sides to this. There is no number one gun because it's going to be environment specific. So I'm not going to tell someone to carry a very modded out AR-15 if you're going to be in a concealed carry environment. And I'm not going to tell someone who's able to be in an environment where you might have shots at 300 yards, carry a pistol. So the first thing to understand is that it is situation specific. I'll give you kind of a overview in regards to one of the biggest misconceptions I have as an instructor, and something that I think should be touched upon, which is that a lot of times if there's going to be women or men who want to conceal carry, their first thought process is going to be about getting the smallest gun possible. Generally speaking, there are two issues that come up with the smallest gun possible: the caliber that it's in, the capacity that it has, and then as a side note, how efficiently you're able to shoot it if your pinky and ring finger are off the gun. So I think you should be carrying the largest gun that you could carry and conceal. So if you're a big dude and you're able to carry a Glock 17, carry a Glock 17 because you're getting all the grip, you're getting all the capacity, and you're getting a lot more comfort when using that gun. So a lot of women will say that I want to get a small gun because they associate small with being able to have less recoil. When we think about it, just basic physics, the caliber that you're shooting is going to determine its snappiness, and the size of the gun and the amount of weight that's on the gun is going to determine how effectively you can shoot it. Okay, so quick note is Tactical Trash Panda recommended that he got comfortable carrying a pistol loaded by carrying in his house loaded, but not carrying outside. So he just got used to the fact that there was a gun on him that was loaded, ready to fire. And then once he got more comfortable with that, he then took it to the next step where he was able to go outside. So that's a good recommendation. I did something similar that when I first started, I carried with in the chamber immediately because I knew that's something I was going to do. So I kind of did the kind of just get over it. But I also was carrying in places that I wasn't overly concerned for the same risk. So if you're going to be carrying a gun, try to carry the biggest that you could carry comfortably and be able to actually use, because that's important. So small does not equate to less snappy. So competition shooters are usually adding as much weight to their gun as possible because it's not about like trekking through a 10-mile hike. It's going to be about the more weight you have on the gun, the more stability you'll have when shooting, and the more easily you'll be able to deploy it with less recoil. So for women, I'll oftentimes start off with a Glock 17 with a Streamlight TLR1HL, even add a weighted base plate just as a starting point for a class so they feel what that feels like and feels what that recoil feels like. And then I'll just switch to a Glock 19, which is one step smaller than the Glock 17, but I just won't have a flashlight, I won't have a weighted base plate, and I'll just let the gun shoot itself. So now from those two guns, which aren't vastly different from each other, you'll see that the flashlight adding weight and the magazine adding weight makes a big difference with recoil management. And that's kind of an easier way to tell that having a larger gun is easier for use of recoil control, as well as also having all that weight is beneficial for being able to clear a house and just knowing that you have comfort in that gun. So that might be something to take into consideration. My personal carry gun is a modified Glock 19. I'm going to be also doing a video on the grips that I chose and stuff like that at some point, because I realized that after spending literally hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on modifications, I finally kind of got an idea of like, this is what works for me. And I would imagine it would work pretty well for you as well. So maybe being able to do a video on that would be beneficial. So in regards to best gun, that's going to be something that situation dictates, right? Let's see. Should my kids know that I have a firearm? And if so, when do I talk to them about it? That's a very good question. First of all, I don't know if the Pew Pew Jew is still on with us, but he wrote books on safety for children. So that might be something to go check out. You can check out the Pew Pew Jew on Instagram. Let's see. So children, the question could be phrased similarly when it talks to using power tools of some form. So if you're going to be using a chainsaw or even a drill, those are things that for children could be very dangerous. And obviously we're not talking about the same level of lethality, but it's going to be about still being a danger, right? So the first thing I would say is going to be about, if there's 2 points of thought. There's going to be, I'm not going to tell my kid because I don't want him to know that we have a firearm. And then I am going to tell my kid because I want to let them know that we have a firearm. Now, what's the pros and cons? If a kid knows that you have a firearm and you explain to them in a safe manner and you demonstrate it to them properly and something like that, that can be beneficial because children's key component of existing is curiosity, because they're learning. They're trying to develop into adults. So questions are going to be asked, and there's plenty of situations, I'm sure more parents on here than I am a parent, are able to give scenarios of where a kid asks an uncomfortable question or said something different than they expected because it might have been something that they heard and they're trying to understand. So if you teach kids about firearm safety and you do it in a safe way, the main thing that disappears is the mystery of what a gun is. So at the minimum, they can understand that it is something that's able to be dangerous. It's something that you have to be careful about. It's something that if I'm using it, I'm always going to be in the same place as a parent. So being able to, in my opinion, teach kids early on about firearm safety at a point where you feel that they're smart enough at least to be able to understand, meaning you're probably not going to teach it to a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, or a 3-year-old, probably. But if you have a 4-year-old who's now being able to understand that, like, daddy has a gun, then being able to teach them in the safest way possible, I think would be most beneficial. Someone also asked, do you think that it's necessary to carry a red dot on an everyday carry? So that's going to very much depend on you. Some people specifically don't carry with a red dot. It bothers them. It comes down to each person's purpose of use. Generally speaking, though, red dots have been proven to make you faster and more accurate. It doesn't mean that Gucci gear will advance that. It's talking also about you getting proper training and then learning how to use it properly. So regardless, that's something that's good. If you're a good shooter and you add a red dot to your gun, you're not going to be a good shooter because there's a training curve. When I'm pointing a gun, if my muscle memory tells me that this is where I'm aiming, usually I'm going to be tilting the gun slightly down, even if that doesn't look like much, because since the red dot is sitting above the sights that you're conventionally used to, that dip is going to be where the dot is now going to present itself. So you're going from here to here, and if you don't practice that, it's going to be very detrimental. So if you're going to, I love red dots. I would no longer carry with that one. However, if you're going into that transition stage of now going to start carrying with a red dot, I really highly recommend you practice a lot because there are huge amounts of benefits to having a red dot on a pistol. But the transition phase of going from sights to a red dot could be very dramatic. So just be aware of that. I'm not sure if it says on your guys' side. Does it say how long we've been going live for? Because I know there's a cutoff time usually, and I don't want to just disappear on you guys if that's not something we'd want to do. So I don't know if it says it because I can't see it on my screen. So you guys can let me know if that's the case. So that's in regards to carrying with a red dot on a pistol. This was also a very interesting question. Should you have ear protection stored with your gun in your home in case someone breaks in so you don't blow your ears out? Very good question. So there are two aspects to this. The first thing would be that if you're able to, I think it's good. I think it's beneficial to have. The question is, how long does it take you to put those on? Also, a question I ask people oftentimes during my seminars is I'll say, I want you to think of someone breaking into your house right now. Okay, well, let's actually do this right now. For the people who are in the chat right now, we'll do a test. I want you to think about a scenario where someone's breaking into your house. Okay, so think about that scenario in your head. Now I'm going to ask you questions on that very brief scenario. Was it during the day or during the night? Was it in the front of your house or the back of your house? Was it potentially through a window? Where were you in relation to the firearm that in your scenario you'd be able to get, right? These are questions that you might not have thought about, but now I want you to take all those scenarios and mix them, right? So if you thought it was during the day, imagine it was during the night. If you thought it was the front door, imagine it was the back door. Switch each one of those environments and see how much of a difference it makes for your home defense plan and how that would be effective. The reason why that's important is because if you're going to think about putting on ear protection, how much time do you actually have to be able to put those on? Because you might not have time. Now, if you're going to be the guy that needs to go downstairs because you thought you heard a noise, having proper hearing protection, like specifically, by the way, the Impact Sports, right? Those are very, very popular hearing protection brand. The reason why those over something like Walkers, by the way, Walkers have general sound versus Impact Pros have specific, they're directional. So if you're going to have a home defense hearing protection, I highly recommend against Walkers because since you're hearing general ambient noise, you won't know where it's coming from. If you have the Impact Pros, then you're going to have directional sound, which will give you kind of superhuman hearing, which could be beneficial. I would say though, and I think some people already commented that I'm willing to sacrifice my ears with tetanus to stay alive. Did I pronounce that right? I hope I pronounced that right. The idea is that it's okay to blow out your ears for the risk of making sure that you're being efficient and fast. By the way, based on some studies that have been shown, people that got into gunfights, one of the things that they have is called audio exclusion, which means I did not pronounce it right. I apologize. One of the things they have is audio exclusion, which means that they might not have even noticed that the gun went off, or that was being dimmed in the sound effect versus the other things that they're hearing, because their body is focusing on one individual threat at a time. So I'm not saying that's going to happen to you. You might really actually blow out your ears, but that's just something worth pointing out. If you're going to have hearing protection, I don't think it's a bad idea. It really depends on each scenario, if you're going to be able to actually use it. But if you're going to use it, use Howard Lights, the Impact Sports. Those are going to be the ones that have directional sound, so you can actually hear where something's coming from. And I think that's actually very important to point out. Guys, you also, again, if you have questions, you can add them to the chat. I think we're at 45 minutes around. So we're getting the hour mark, I think, is when Instagram shuts it off. So I'll keep talking until that point. At what age do you recommend someone should be able to go to the range? How old should that person be? So the oldest person I think I've had come to the range was in their 80s. The youngest person I think I've had come to the range, I believe, was 12, might have been 11. So it's the same kind of scenario as what age would you teach kids about gun safety? That perspective is going to be very much based on you as a parent to determine if you feel they're ready for it. Now, you can always start with, let's say, a 22, so there's barely, if any, recoil. You could obviously you will be a responsible parent and monitor them the whole time so that nothing goes wrong in that regard. As well as once that kid, if you're already taking them to the range, that means you've probably already taught them about the basics of safe handling a firearm. So at that point, they would at least know that. So going to the next step, I think that's great. What I think is also important is that if you're going to take a kid to the range, you really need to make sure that you don't accidentally build in bad habits that will affect them long term. So what I mean by that is don't give them a gun that might be too large, so their stance is going to be different than what you want their actual stance to be, because if they get really comfortable with that, that can end up being an issue. So it might be good to give them a proper platform where they would be able to do it properly, not have that issue. Have you shot the MCX Virtus from SIG, and what are your take on it? I have not. I want to. PCCs in general, I'm sure, is a very debated topic in regards to that, but I have not yet shot it. Let's see. Yes, gun safety could start with Nerf guns. I'm going to move the camera a bit because I see someone dropped a question. Let me see if I can access that, and I can't. So I'm going to move the camera because I want to. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it for you. 1 second. I got a question. Do you still own your first gun? That's a great question. And that person actually knows what my first gun is. My first gun, I was nerding out for literal months to be able to get my first gun. And obviously, when my first gun I purchased at 18, so it had to be a rifle, living in the state of California. So my first gun was a Colt LE 6920 MP-B. Ask me how many times I memorized that specific phrase. The Colt LE, which was the law enforcement edition, 6920, which is kind of one of their lines of rifles. MP was the Magpul-B, was in the color black. That was my first rifle. I still own that gun. It is never going to be sold because it is sentimental to me. So definitely going to be modified, and it has been modified a lot. However, I do own the same lower receiver, and the majority of it, the majority of the lower receiver is the same. So not much has changed on it. I think I put in a Geisley trigger. I changed out. I think I ended up putting on other stuff that might have been taken off at some point, but I do still have that gun. Solid gun. Yeah, so that was my first rifle. Was that rifle? Really like it, and I know that guy knows what I named that gun. I named guns. So as a general rule, if you're going to name guns, you have two routes of being able to go. Human names, which that's one way of doing it. The other way is going to be themed. So my theme was medical. So there was anesthesia because it puts you to sleep, morphine because it takes away the pain, and you guys can now be creative in different versions of what that was. What was the first training class I took? Ooh, that's a good question. I think, so my first training class, my actual first training class was with a competition shooter. I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm not going to say it. He was a competition shooter, so he was teaching me the basics of firearms, which was really nice of him because he was an instructor at the range I went to. He happened to have additional time in that day, so he said, "Just give me $20 and I'll go through the basics with you." And he really was like the first guy that explained to me the actual value of having proper training. So we went through a lot of competition stuff because that's not going to be always as applicable to what we're doing today. But that did help me a lot with understanding firearm safety and being able to use a gun properly and learning how to use my rifle, which was really cool. Someone asked, how often do you take advanced courses? My rule of thumb is that I go to the range often, but I take a formal course, a minimum once a year. So now that sounds like not that often. However, you should be training often in general. But meaning if I'm going to be spending so to give a general overview, again, I'm Jewish, so I eat kosher, which also means that there's a lot of other things religiously I need to do day to day. So for me to fly to absolutely in the middle of nowhere, for some people might not be a problem. Sorry, someone asked about Polymer 80. I will get to that. For me to go to a training course is very expensive because kosher food and travel and hotel stays and things that are generally might be conventional to the average person. I mean, not kosher food, but hotel stays and stuff like that. There are religious aspects to being there as well. So those oftentimes will rack up additional costs. So for me, for example, if I'm going to go to a course that costs $500, plus food, plus travel, plus everything else, I'm spending the bare minimum is being $1,000, probably a little bit more. Again, kosher food being a variable. Yeah, you could get just peanut butter sandwiches that are kosher. But like, if I'm going to a course where I might be burning a lot of calories, I need proper food and proteins, so I'm not going to pass out. So that's usually going to be consideration. Also, let's say if some courses are in middle of nowhere, if it's going to be on a Sabbath, I'm not allowed to train on Sabbath. I'm not allowed to do work on Sabbath. So I would have to fly there at minimum Friday, stay over Sabbath at a synagogue or something like that, and then on Sunday take the course. So I could be spending more money on hotels or stays just to be able to make sure that I'm able to be there on Sunday if the course starts at 8 a.m. So there's a lot of those variables. So at minimum, one big course a year and training as consistently as often as possible throughout the year till that point. What do you think about Polymer 80s? I think they are awesome. They need to be broken in very heavily. So don't just complete a Polymer 80 and think that you're done. There's a lot more work to it. Also, I think that Polymer 80 became kind of like a buzz term where you're not just talking about Polymer 80, but any type of firearm. I'm not gonna say the part because I don't know if the algorithm picks that up. But having that I think is a very valuable thing. I think every American should own one. But being able to use it and train a lot with it and make sure that it was done properly is very important. And again, make sure that you really put a lot of rounds behind it so you make sure that it's actually able to function. They're great, but you need to make sure they work well. Other than Polymer 80, there's also, I remember at some point, Strike Industries was making one that was really nice, as well as I know if the Tactical Trash Panda is still on, I know he knows a bunch of them, I'm sure. There's also the GSG9. I don't know what the company that is, but the GSG9 is also really cool. They have an interchangeable grip. They can switch between a Glock 19 size and a Glock 17 size. I think that's awesome. But there's a lot of different companies out there that make that style thing that you're able to get. Would you even travel to get classes across America? Let's set up classes, ranges, and training classes. So I am going to be traveling more. This is actually not public yet. You guys are the first to hear it. All of you who are currently watching are going to hear this for the first time. I'm going to now be much more doing a lot more travel across the US to give courses and to take courses. So the next big course that's going to be coming up is going to be in Washington State. Nothing's public about that yet, so I'm not able to give a lot of details into regards to when and how that's going to happen. But Washington State is going to be the next course I'm doing that's big. I also have plans to go to Texas. I have a lot of friends in Texas who are being very helpful to be able to try to arrange the ranges that I would be able to use. If you have any connections to arrange, and if you're in any state at all, let me know. I would love to be able to actually organize something for you guys. So that's definitely not a problem. So no matter what state you're in, if you're connected to a range or just would be able to help me organize to be able to get a range to accept us, preferably outdoor, because a lot of the things I want to do would be much better suited for an outdoor range. If it's indoor, but they let us move around a lot, perfect. But that's just going to be something I would like to do. So again, if you're connected to a range, if you know a range, let me know. You could message me directly on Instagram, and we'll try to make it happen. So definitely more plans to do traveling for the upcoming year, and throughout the summer from now on. That's definitely going to be something I would like to do. Yes, if I'm going to be, no matter which state I end up going to, I'm going to post about it. So I know Texas is coming up. I don't know when. I'm really trying to get a date solidified. It might be sooner than later, so look out for it. But if you're connected to a range, if you know a range, hit me up. I'm down. I'm definitely down to do that. I think we're getting closer to our time limit. If you guys have more questions, put it into the chat so I can answer that before we get cut out over here. I did look into. By the way, again, if you're connected to a range in any state, message me and I'll do my best to try to arrange it there. Like no question at all. If you're connected, whether you're connected to a range or not, if you're living in a state that you'd like me to come out to, message me and I'll see what I can do. what was I about to say? Florida, I looked into Florida. So here's the problem with Florida, they are super expensive. Again, I'm not against it, but I just need to figure out a range that I could use, because some ranges are as cheap as, let's say, $100 for a rental of a bay. The ones that I went to in Florida to check were close to $1,500. I'm not saying that about all of them, but the ones that I did look into were around that price, which would just kill me. Like, I would not want to spend that kind of money to then upcharge the students coming to the class if that's what it costs. Meaning I usually cover that fee. That's not a problem. But $1,500 seems very steep for a range. Someone asked, what does the class entail? The question is going to be which class you want to take. Hold on a second. I'm seeing that. Oh no, someone asked a question in the bubble. I have to check what someone asked. What does the class entail? It depends on the course that you ultimately take. If you're going to take, probably the class I'm going to try to push the most for is active shooter, because it's very relevant to what we're doing today, unfortunately. So I think that's a very valuable class. Also, it's my core. It's the one course that I have that really combines a huge amount of info when it comes to information. So the best bang for most people, the best bang for your buck, no pun intended, is going to be the active shooter class. So I think that might be something that would be most valuable, which is probably the class I'll give more of. I think when I'm going to Washington, I believe I'm going to be giving an active shooter pistol course and an active shooter rifle course. So same main idea, but very different in tactics when it comes to using a pistol versus a rifle. So that's something I plan on doing. I think we're pretty much at our limit. I know we're going to cut out in a second. So I want to thank all of you guys who stayed through. I really appreciate you sticking around. I will hopefully figure out what the deal is with YouTube and why it really cut out at the most inconvenient time, even though I tested it. Maybe it's because since people started coming on, it messed it up a little bit more. So I'm going to make sure that I have proper service next time, and hopefully we'll be able to do a different live just there, because if you guys have any questions in general, like, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to help out in any way that I can. I feel like I'm ending one of my videos, but no, I'm speaking to you directly. I'm here to speak to the people. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate you guys commenting throughout this way, asking all your questions. If you enjoyed this live, I'm going to post it. Feel free to leave a comment there as well, because I would like to see what questions people might have missed or anything like that. As well as also, I'd like to do more of these. I think it was very valuable to be able to have these conversations. Also, my videos are usually, I'm trying to keep them very limited. Like, I know people are not going to be watching a half-hour video, but if it's interaction, I know it does better. So I can just rant and talk for a long time and hopefully still provide valuable information to you guys. So yes, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys all your time, and hopefully we'll do this again very soon. Have a good night.